I'm so excited to introduce my guest today. Brian Asman is a writer, actor, director from San Diego. He's the author of Good Dogs from Blackstone Publishing. His other books include I'm Not Even Supposed to Be Here Today, Neo Arcana, Nunchuck City, Jailbroke, Our Black Hearts Beat as One, and The Return of the Living Elves. He's also published short stories in Pulp Modern, American Cannibal, and Kelp, and comics in Tales of Horrorgasm. Brian holds an MFA from USCR Palm Desert. His book, Man, Fuck This House, is out on October 7th. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, Sabrina, thanks for having me here. I am so excited to be on Slaying the Craft.
So tell me a little bit about it. It's a collection of short stories, but like, where did this come from? What are we looking at here?
Sure. Well, it started as a Twitter joke. I was like, what would be a really funny name for a haunted house story, And I was like, man, fuck this house. And a bunch of people were like, yeah, that's really funny. And I decided to write it. So it just kind of went from there. It was originally published as a novella in 2021. It became a bit of a viral smash, thanks in part to screenwriter Molly Hodgson, who is best known for Star Wars Rogue One and Jurassic World. She tweeted about it. That became like a meme that people shared all over the place. And the book really took off. So around that time, Eric LaRocca's Things Have Gotten Worse Since Last We Spoke was also blowing up, and he sold the rights to Titan to republish the book. And so Blackstone, my publisher, was like, we'd like to do the same thing with your book. Let's take the story and we'll do a new version of it. And then we'll also, add some short stories in to, kind of flesh out the page count. And that's where we were. So that's how all this happened. And now I get a beautiful hardcover edition. The new version of Man, Fuck This House, the story itself is about 7,000 words longer. So it's fleshed out. There's new chapters. Some sections have been rewritten. Some stuff switched around. There's brand new Easter eggs that I put into it. So things like that. And then there's 6 additional short stories included as well.
So for your the primary story in this book, what exactly is it about? Because I know that there's a character named Sabrina in a haunted house, and I was like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about this.
Yes, so it's your typical haunted house setup, right? A family moves across the country to a new house, and then spooky things begin to happen. But from there, it's kind of really more of a reversal of a lot of the common tropes of horror. So you've got the spooky kid, but, it's a bit of I'm playing with the concept of a spooky kid. One of the things that inspired me to write the book was oftentimes in horror, sometimes when you read from a kid's perspective, you can really tell it's like an adult and they're not even really trying to write how a child sees the world. And I really wanted to include that in this book and kind of write from a perspective of like a childish perspective. One book that did that really well was Incidents Around the House by Josh Mallerman. I don't know if you've read that, but that was...
I haven't, but I know Scary Mommy, right?
Yeah. Other Mommy.
Oh, Other Mommy.
But, he's writing from a kid's perspective, and we have to... When you think about how kids see the world, they don't have a lot of information, and they make these funny, intuitive leaps with the information that they do have. For example, I saw this one post on like Facebook or something, and it was about this parent who was like, my kid kept demanding to hear the Batman song over and over again, and I couldn't figure out what the Batman song was. It wasn't like the theme song to like the 60s series that's like da-na-na-na Batman.
Yeah.
It wasn't that. Finally, the parent figured out it was All Along the Watchtower by Jimi Hendrix. Why did the kid call it the Batman song? Because in the first line of the song, Jimi Hendrix says the Joker. And so making
is like a leap that like, nope, my mind would not have gone there. That is very interesting from writing from a child's perspective. There's such limited knowledge of the world.
Yeah, exactly. They kind of just put things that are familiar to them together, and they put them together in these weird ways. That particular example resonated with me because when I was a kid, I remember hearing the Star Spangled Banner for the first time, and there's that line, "Whose broad stripes and white stars?"
Yeah.
And it sounds like it sounded to me like they were referring to a person, and I immediately thought, wait, is this a song about Captain America? Like, seriously, I asked my parents, and they were like, "This was written in like the 1840s. Shut up."
Thanks, Mom and Dad.
But that's just like one example of like the intuitive leaps that kids make, how they see the world, and so with Damien, the son in this, I wanted to write a kid who was smart and precocious and a little on the baby Stewie side from Family Guy, but
Yeah.
he's also very much a child in different ways, you know? And he's kind of like acts like he's this super genius, but he's also a kid, you know? And so that was the other inspiration, was to poke fun at a lot of the tropes or put my own spin on them while also still trying to be a solid horror story in and of itself.
Yeah. So when you were writing this story, so you've got like your main one and then the other ones that were added on, are the other stories related? Are they like somehow like thematically related? Are they related to the main story at all, like side characters, or where are these other stories that are here?
Sure. So they're not related plot wise. They're not really, they're not like spin-off stories or anything like that. But yeah, I think there are some thematic things that are through lines throughout the entire collection, that you can probably pick up on. So themes of family. There's another story that's about a mother-daughter relationship called In the Rushes, and kind of like the interpersonal relationships between the mother and daughter, and that I think is a little thematically related to Man Fuck This House, which is mostly about the relationship between a mother and son.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another story called Beware the Hurly Burly, which is also written from a kid's perspective. It's kind of a take on the Slenderman crimes,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
which that one really got under my skin. And also that kind of goes to what I was talking about earlier, about the way that kids see the world, where
Mm-hmm.
they don't really have the same ideas about like permanence that adults do. And I think about when I was a kid and some of the things that people I knew got into, and how you can't really, you can like, play it being gangster or something like that. And it doesn't like, you can't really conceptualize the future, right? And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things, even when you as a kid, when kids are engaging in violence, it's still kind of a game to them,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying like blame violent video games or anything like that, but it's more how children see the world. And you
I
know
find it so fascinating. So, like, total tangent side note, I've been taking a Citizens Police Academy class with my local police department. And last night we were with the K-9 unit, and they were saying, though, they were talking about the amount of arrests that they have, violent crime arrests, and it's teenage boys.
yeah.
It's like almost like majority of the violent crime arrests are these guys, and it's not like they're like what, like, we used to think about in the 90s where everyone's like standing on the street corner in their colors and everything like that. Like, it's just a different thing. So I think that's so fascinating, and it makes sense to be thinking like these that teenage boys, they also think they're invincible.
Yes.
And young people
Exactly.
think they're invincible, they have no object permanence.
Right, exactly. You think you're never going to die. You think that you're going to be this age forever. I remember being 16 and thinking about how old a 25-year-old was.
Yeah.
Like that was like geriatric in my mind, It was and even forget about 30. And now that I'm like in my early 40s, like I look at someone who's like 25 as like, they're basically the same age as me, even though they
Isn't
wouldn't
it
see it the
weird?
same.
Whoa, what happened?
Yeah.
And then the 25-year-olds look at us and they're like, oh, well, I mean, you're
Yeah.
in your 40s.
Yeah, I know. And when I think about like if I'm talking to someone who's like in their 60s, like I feel less of a gap between us. But
Yeah.
but I feel even less of a gap between someone who's like, 25 now, because I'm like, really, we're only about 15 years apart, that's
Yeah.
whatever. Or like someone who's
But
like in their
a
30s, like I'm like,
lifetime apart.
yeah,
Like, mentally so different.
it's so different. Yeah, exactly. It's so funny when just the way that, your perception changes over time.
Yeah, I could see that also being really fun to play with as a writer, like being able to come back to taking out things that logically as an adult, to then be able to say like, how could a child misinterpret this, and
Yes.
then how can that make it even scarier or more tense or that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is one of the things that's scary about being a kid, is not understanding things, and things that can be normal can be terrifying. It's, kind of like I have a dog, and it's kind of like being a dog where, sometimes like I can't explain to them the vacuum cleaner won't hurt him.
Yeah. They just
Not
they
that my
don't
dog is
know.
actually scared of anything, actually. He doesn't give a shit about vacuum cleaners. He's like, whatever, it's fine. Um, But actually skateboards is his thing. Like just skateboards
They
drive
are
me crazy.
terrifying. I
Yeah.
mean, I get it. I also get scared when I see, well, kids on skateboards.
Yeah. Yeah. The delinquents. Yes.
The
Good.
delinquents.
Good callback to what we were just talking about.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of going back to the stories a little bit. So for short stories and like versus a full-length novel, how many drafts does it take to write each one? Like kind of what's the difference in that crafting experience?
It's different every time. So I think for the novella, Man Fuck This House, that took about 6 weeks for me to write. And then
Wait, so to be clear, to draft?
for first probably through like second or third draft.
Okay.
Only took
Okay.
about 6 weeks. Sometimes stories just kind of fly through me, you know.
Yeah.
And then obviously I went back and edited it more. For the short stories, it's just kind of all over the place. Some are stories that I wrote years ago that I completely rewrote from the ground up for this. Like the Tire Swing and Line of Sight were both like essentially complete rewrites from the ground up. So how long? I mean, how long does it take? I'm not sure. It really varies.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have like a specific process where you're like, okay, I only like I don't show anybody my draft and of whatever I'm working on until it's 3 drafts in and it's polished, or you like first draft, hey, what do you think? Am I like on the right track? Like where kind of are you at in that process?
Well, I mean, I probably more towards it's when it's done. Like I don't use beta readers anymore.
Yeah.
So I just send it to my editor when I think it's ready for him to read. So
Yeah. So have you used beta readers in the past though?
some like early on, I was on Lit Reactor way back in the day.
Okay.
I don't know if you have any
Mm-mm.
familiarity. I can't talk this morning with that site, but it was started by Chuck Palahniuk, and they had
Oh.
a forum where you could like post your work in progress and have other people review it. And then they had like a credit system where you had to like review people's work in order to get like enough credits to post a new work yourself, basically. So it just
Oh.
ensured that people would, beta read and workshop each other's stuff. And then, so I did that when I was younger. And then when I was in grad school, we were doing workshops and things like that. But, once I transitioned to more professionally publishing, like I don't really use beta readers anymore.
No, yeah, that's really interesting. I think it really varies. So because this is a craft podcast and we focus, like we do a lot where we talk about early writing experience for people who are just like kind of starting to come into it. And I find that really fascinating I've seen this kind of happen with other guests as well, where they kind of start out with the beta readers, critique partners, and then that changes
Yeah.
over time. And I just like, I wonder how much of that is confidence or how much of that is contract.
I mean, it's a combination. That's interesting, yeah. And I think beta readers can be super helpful for people who are just starting out. But yeah, I think it's a variety of things. It's confidence. It's leveling up your skills. It's just how like publishing works when you get to a certain level. When you become like a mid-list author or even more popular than that. Like you
Yeah.
really just don't really. I know some like very high-profile authors who still use beta readers.
Yeah.
And I think it's different for everyone.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely makes sense. Well, the whole process is like your entire thought process, how stories come to be really is so personalized and so different for each person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so what was the most fun part of these stories? Like which story was the most fun to write or the fun part within each story?
I mean, I have a great time writing no matter what. It's like my
Yeah.
favorite thing to do other than pet my dog, basically. So, I'm always having a good time with this. So there's aspects of every story that I can call out that I specifically had fun with for sure. Like just with Man Fuck This House. It's pretty much never as an author get to go back to a published work and change the things that you want to change in it.
Yeah.
And so that was a lot of fun, and also including new Easter eggs. That's always a good time for me.
Hmm.
One of the stories I really enjoyed writing was Razor Bill, which is my haunted outhouse story. So yeah,
Oh no.
yeah,
I don't even know if I want to know what's gonna
yeah,
happen in
no,
the
no, no, no.
haunted
Okay.
outhouse.
So it takes place in a small like western town in California called Boomerang, and it's about a bunch of kids who on a dare. The town has a haunted outhouse where a legendary outlaw was killed. And so they go to the haunted, and the thing is, if you knock on the door in a certain way, and say the magic words, then the ghost will appear, right? And so they go to see the ghost. And there's just for your listeners, there's absolutely nothing scatological about the story, because the thing is, if you're doing a haunted outhouse story, I think you have to play it straight otherwise.
Yes.
Right. It's kind of like, it's not a precise comparison, but when you think about like double mumbo jumbo, like Blake Snyder's principle from Save the Cat,
okay. Oh yes. Yeah.
Where you can't have double mumbo jumbo in movies. Where if you have like, if you introduce like a magic system, for example, you can't have aliens suddenly show up also.
No.
Right. It breaks it. So for me, it's like kind of double silliness. Is like, if you have a premise that's a little tongue in cheek, then you need to play it straight. If you have a straight laced premise, then you can go really crazy with it. Right.
Yeah.
And so, so that story was really fun to write, just because I like the idea of like a haunted outhouse. It was just, I've never seen that done before,
No.
like, but it makes sense. Like, if ghosts appear everywhere, right? If you say ghosts and appear in different places, then, why not a spooky old outhouse in this, like, kind of like Western town that's become like this kitschy tourist trap, basically.
I'm just imagining Tombstone. Like, it's
very inspired by that. When the time I went to Tombstone was so much fun, and it's always stuck with me. And so, yeah, this is kind of like a very similar town to like a Tombstone, Arizona, for sure.
That's amazing. I live in Phoenix. That's why I was thinking of it.
Yeah.
Arizona. We got that like southwestern outhouses. I'm picturing just like that old wooden house with like the half moon crest.
Yeah, that's 100% it. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be at the Poison Pen next Thursday with Philip Fracassi in Scottsdale, so you should come.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, great. I'll put it on the calendar.
Excellent.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I love going to the Poison Pen. They're so wonderful. And have you ever been there before?
First time. So
I am
really excited. And it's actually a real funny side story, real quick. So we were pitching them about doing an event, and they were like, we haven't really done a lot of horror stuff. And then Nat Cassidy did an
Nat Cassidy and Brian McCauley. I know that they went. And now Darcy Coates has been.
Yeah, and so basically after that event, they immediately turned around and called us and said, "Hey, actually, we would love to do a horror event because it was so successful." So I always have to thank Nat and Brian for really kicking open the door for us on that one.
So amazing. Yeah, I mean, I think it's fantastic. I love Brian. I'm a big Brian fan. Yeah.
I was actually just hanging out with him a couple of weeks ago here in San Diego. He had his book release, and we ended up going out to like this three-story arcade downtown for the night, which is super fun. Then we went to a trailer park theme bar, which was a really good time. So,
oh my gosh,
Brian's a fun dude.
That sounds way more fun than what we did. I just like I did his launch with him, and then I was like, bye. Yeah. Just like an Irish goodbye and got out. It sounds way more fun. Anywho, so coming back to your story, Man, Fuck This House, what do you want readers to walk away from this book feeling?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I think what you take from a book can be very personal. So, I can tell you that I've had a number of readers come up to me, all mothers, and say that their big takeaway from the book was that, like, the book, Sabrina's experience specifically in the book, reflected something that they feel at times, but feel like they can't even really articulate to themselves about like their anxieties about being a parent. And so that's like the most meaningful praise I've ever gotten as a writer, frankly, is when someone's like, you really nailed this like unspoken part of my experience, and thank you.
That's amazing. Are you a parent?
No. I mean,
so that's even more amazing. Not only are you not a parent, you're not a mom.
Yeah.
Like, congratulations. That's pretty incredible.
I know.
How do you think you were able to pull that off? Like, what did you pull from? Did you talk with people, or how'd you do that?
So one of the inspirations for the book was this coffee table book from the early 2000s called Post Secret, where people were encouraged to write in with their secrets. And
I remember Post Secret.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yes.
Yes.
So one of them was, I love one of my children. And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I started thinking about like, because every parent's refrain is, well, I love my children
I love them all
equally. And I've
equally.
I've always been skeptical about that. I'm like, I think you can definitely have times when you feel more affinity towards one than the other,
Hmm.
that probably waxes and wanes over the years. But also like there's definitely families where one parent is definitely the favorite parent or the favorite
Yeah.
child or whatever,
Yeah.
you know. And so that was the inspiration for it. And then as far as like just the execution of it, like honestly, I didn't really talk to people. What I do with any character is I just try to make them fully realized. And I always
Hmm.
find that like even when I'm writing outside of my own personal experience, which is often because like I've never shot a zombie in the face with a shotgun,
Oh, you
or I've
haven't? Oh,
never
you
been
really
a
should. It's
parent,
a pretty
or
amazing experience.
yeah, exactly. I've never tried to summon the outhouse ghost in a western town or anything like that either. Um, I just think when you write characters, as long as you're giving them things they want, things they need, making them seem fully realized, is people will always respond with that. And then the other thing, my other principle for writing characters is that characters should never be surprised by things that are normal to them.
Hmm.
And so what I mean by that is, okay, for example, I have female friends who've said that like, if I was a guy for a day, the first thing I would do is stand in the mirror and freaking shake that thing around like a helicopter just to see it fly around, right? And
Honey.
I think when people write outside their experience, you can tell when they're doing exactly that.
Hmm.
Because the things that are normal to someone's experience are surprising to that particular writer, or
Okay.
novel or interesting to that particular writer. Right. And so that's how you get the her boobs bounce boobily up and down the stairs when they're almost like fetishizing things about the
Yeah.
character. Instead of just going like, yeah, this person, like, I don't know, as a woman, there are probably times that you think about your boobs, but it's not all the
But
time.
not that
You
often,
understand me?
actually. That doesn't happen all
Yeah.
that often.
If you're like, this bra is uncomfortable or something like that. But like, other than that, you're not like standing in
No.
front of the mirror going, my God, my boobs, you know?
No. Not on a regular basis.
Right. Exactly. And so, yeah, there are, just anyway, I probably shouldn't be bringing up this on your podcast. I'm sorry, it's getting awkward. I'm trying to
I'm
make a
getting
craft
so
point. I swear to God. Oh, okay. I'm just realizing this is how Brian gets canceled. I'm like, I swear to God, I was trying to make a point about craft.
okay. Okay. So
Anyway,
but point being, normalize things that are normal for
right.
somebody that's outside of your experience. Like what you find is like normal for you.
Yes.
Like think about that. Put yourself in the shoes of like what is this is typical, right?
Thank you for cleaning up what I was just saying into a format that isn't gonna like, again, get a huge public outcry against me as
Leaving it in. I'm leaving it in.
you know what? I'm willing to die on this hill. It's okay.
Listen. You stand by what you said.
Yeah.
So kind of switching gears a little bit. Brian, why do you write the dark and twisted? Like, what drew you to this genre versus like the next great American novel or romantasy or whatever?
So I'm glad that you asked that because writing dark and twisted stuff, as you put it, is actually what unlocked my ability to be able to write consistently to begin with.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And so I've always wanted to be a writer. I loved as a kid, I would write stories, I would make up worlds, I would do all kinds of stuff. And when I went to college, I majored in English in undergrad because it was the only thing I thought I could do for 4 years and not lose my mind.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I get out of college and I'm like, I want to be a writer. And I was trying to write these literary stories because I thought that's what I should be writing. I thought,
That's what a writer is,
right.
right?
Yeah,
A writer
exactly.
is somebody who writes that.
Yes, and I would, I had this fantasy of going to New York. Well, not really New York because I hate the cold weather, but like going to California and wearing scarves and like boxy glasses and like one of those corduroy jackets with
Uh-huh.
leather
Uh-huh.
patches, or like a leather jacket with corduroy patches, maybe. Um,
Somehow I'm like picturing you as Matthew Gray Goobler. Like, I
yes,
don't know if you know who that is.
I
Like
love
that big
Matthew
of
Gray Gubler.
that's
Yes,
100% what I'm back
yeah,
picturing.
dude, he is
I
amazing.
also love him.
Yes, yeah, he is. Yeah, he's just adorable. I love him. Um, So yeah, so anyway, I pictured myself as like a literary writer. And so I tried to write like literary stuff, but I kept writing stuff that was like kind of like humorous and like, didn't really fit in anywhere. Like I'd look at literary magazines and like I'd read stories and be like, none of my stuff fits in here. And also I'm not super interested in a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and so I for years and years, I just kind of like, spun my wheels as a writer because I was trying to write something that I wasn't really interested in, but felt like I was supposed to write. And then
Mm-hmm.
finally, I was reaching sort of a milestone age, and I go, I always thought I'd be a writer by this point, and a published writer by this point, frankly,
Right.
and I'm not. And so I made the decision to shift and write something I was interested in. I've always loved horror, although as a kid I was a big scaredy cat as a kid, and so
Yeah.
it was always kind of like dip my toe in and then run screaming away. So that essentially that's what drew me to writing the stuff. Is like the second I started writing horror, writing sci-fi, writing kind of anything related to that, immediately I was able to actually write and complete stories, which I always kind of struggled with doing before. Like suddenly writing
Yeah.
didn't feel like a chore anymore, because it kind of, a lot of the time it did, except when I was really on one,
Yeah.
I would be like, oh, this is fun. But a lot of the time it felt like a chore. It felt like I need to go eat my vegetables or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And once I started writing stuff I was super interested in, that's when I became very excited about writing. And then that first year, I wrote 16 short stories and a novel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I
So
had,
you were like, okay, no, this is it. Like, this is speaking to me.
this is
Let my freak flag fly.
100%. And like I had never been able to complete a novel before. Like the longest thing I had ever written up to that point was about 40,000 words of
Hmm.
like this kind of like weird Dark Tower sort of ish fantasy, dark fantasy, apocalypse kind of thing.
Okay.
Um, and I kept getting stuck in stories because I would go, I'm not sure what happens next.
Hmm.
And when I made the decision to commit to horror, I also made the decision that I was going to finish everything I wrote no matter what. And so I
Okay.
started realizing that like I had too much anxiety over what happens next, when there are lots of things that can happen next. And the important thing is just to write the story, and then you can go back and fix it later, just get to the end. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That get to the end is definitely a challenge, especially I think newer writers. Like that's the first kind of major, well, the second major hurdle. First is starting. The second major hurdle is finishing,
Yes.
even if it's like it feels wrong. And I know that like I've had to deal with this, and I've had other writer friends where we're constantly trying to remember, like, keep your eyes on your own paper. Don't compare your work in progress to a published work. Like it's never going to be the same. And all you're really trying to do is just get the story down, which is such a challenge, especially if you want it, like if you've got in your own head about stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was the biggest thing for me, was always just getting the story down, and, realizing it could go, it doesn't matter where it goes in a way,
Yeah.
in the first
How
draft.
did you how do you get over that, like what happens next? Like what did you do? You just were like, well, whatever comes out of my fingertips? Like how are you getting
Yeah.
over that
Yeah,
hump?
I just decided that that was just what I had to do. And so I can be very obstinate, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. And so in this
Yeah.
case, I used kind of my personality defects in my favor. And basically, once I decided that I wasn't allowed to do that, like for example, another thing is like I am not allowed to do not finish books, and
Oh, I
yeah.
feel very differently than
Yeah,
that.
and no, and that's good. That good for you, because I've spent a lot of time slogging through books where I'm like, this kind of sucks, but
You're like,
I'll
what am
keep
I
going.
doing?
But
It's a waste of my life.
yeah, I just have this thing where like I compulsively need to finish. I can't start a TV series unless I finish it. I can't start a
Hmm.
movie unless I finish it. It's just I don't know what it is, but it's like an OCD thing probably, or something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, I decided to take that impulse, which is kind of leads to me wasting a lot of time in other areas, and just apply it to my work and go, you know what? You're not allowed to not finish. And
Yeah.
I also gave myself permission to suck as hard as I needed to. And
Hmm.
so I said, you know what? If you're at a point of the story and you're like, and then the world blew up and everyone died, that's still an ending, even if
Yeah.
it's stupid. And so honestly, I found that I never needed to do something like that, though, because once I was committed to finishing, I wrote my way into an ending that was at least acceptable.
Yeah. Well, and I think it kind of gives you that, like, you're not letting yourself off the hook, right? So you've got to figure out how you're going to get through this regardless.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah.
I find when you have constraints that actually makes you more creative.
Hmm.
So in the filmmaking space, for example, I find often, if you have a huge budget, like just from a horror perspective, those movies are rarely scary to me, like the big budget stuff, unless it's like Sinister or something, which I think is actually a pretty small budget for a studio flick. Um, but if you have a small budget, you have to like think more carefully and more intentionally about your scares and what you're doing. And so I always find like low budget movies, like one of the scariest movies I've seen is The Witch in the Window.
Okay.
It's by the director of Yellow Brick Road, I believe, which is also a great movie. But that movie is terrifying, and it doesn't have special effects really. It doesn't have anything. It just has good writing, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think constraints are important for creativity. And so just to tie that back to what I was saying, once I gave myself the constraint of you're not allowed to abandon stories, I became more creative.
Because you have to, right?
Right.
Like, you have to make
I
your way
had to
through it.
figure something out. I had to figure something out.
I think that's really interesting what you're saying as far as like the constraints go and comparing to movies. So, like the horror movie Hush, I think it's called
Yes,
Hush.
Hush, Mike Flanagan about the deaf
So,
woman being
yes,
stalked. Yeah, great
yes,
movie.
yes. Okay, well, like, talk about being in constraint. She can't hear or speak. He can't get in. She can't get out. Like, that is all very. I think that I don't know what, like, for whatever reason, this is like clicking for me right now. Like,
Yeah,
that idea of like putting constraints on it so that you have to be creative within that realm, because it can almost be overwhelming to be like, well, there's all these possibilities, right? Like, you can do a brainstorm where you end up with like 50 different options for this one scene. Like, it can be
yeah,
overwhelming. So the constraint, I think, makes a lot of sense.
yeah, absolutely. It definitely helps. Like, yeah, like you said, you can end up with a kitchen sink approach if you have,
Yeah.
too few constraints, frankly. So,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So if you could teach a new writer one thing, what would it be? And can you teach it to me right now?
ooh, that is a good question. Okay, so I'm one of my patented tricks right here is for writing action scenes.
Okay.
Okay. And so, which I think are actually very difficult to write. And I don't often read good ones. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of counterintuitive, but often when I get to action scenes in books, I kind of like gloss over them a lot of the
Hmm.
time because these should be the most exciting things ever. And they often don't really work well.
Yeah.
And so my trick for writing action scenes is that it's every action scene is kind of like a microcosm of 3 act structure.
Okay.
So basically, what that means is you need like an inciting incident, right? So,
Hmm.
why does the action scene kick off? You need reversals, and you need kind of like certain beats in there, right? So, if you have two characters who start fighting, sorry, there's the inciting incident, and then kind of the break into two is really when the fight kicks off, and that
Yeah.
becomes I use a lot of save the cat language because I think it's a helpful
Yeah.
way of looking at stories. So, if you're not familiar
I
with
think it's
save
also
the cat,
super accessible to
yeah.
people.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, for anyone not familiar with Save the Cat, go check it out. It's definitely worth having in your lexicon. So anyway, when you get to the fun and games part, that's just like the standard fight between two people, right? Where
Hmm.
it's the promise of the premise. Two characters are squaring off, and boom, boom, boom. We're gonna throw fisticuffs, right? But
Yeah.
at the halfway point, something needs to change, right? People, you can't just keep being like Bill punch Bob, Bob punch Bill, Bill punch like right. So now you need something different to happen at like the halfway point that changes the
Mhm.
nature of the fight completely. That can be another character showing up. That could be them kind of like rolling through a doorway into a hair salon. That can be just all, so a change in scenery, a change in character. One of the characters escalates by grabbing a weapon, things like that, right? And then there's going
Yeah.
to be, as you get more towards the third act, there's got to be your bad guys close in and all is lost moments where there's a real possibility that your protagonist can lose the fight, because otherwise it becomes like my example for a really terrible fight scene is in The Matrix Reloaded, where Neo
Okay.
is fighting the 100 Agent Smiths, because it's very beautifully choreographed or whatever, but it's utterly meaningless because we know that they can't hurt him and he can't hurt them, and it's just kind of like
So what are we doing
it's
here?
like watching two children hit each other with Nerf weapons. Like it's just pointless. Um, so that's good, so you want to avoid that, right? You want you want that moment, like in any movie, right, where you have the all is lost moment for your protagonist in a movie. You want that all is
Mm-hmm.
lost moment in the middle of towards the end of the fight scene, right?
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, you have to, you have your climax and you have your resolution. So, I'd say, like, think of every fight scene as a microcosm of 3 act structure, and that will allow you to kind of figure out the different beats that need to go into each one.
That's amazing. That's a fantastic tip because definitely action scenes are one of the things that are really challenging to figure out how to write, especially if you're not like a physical, like actiony
Yeah,
person,
which
right?
most
Like
of us
that's
writers are
also,
not.
yeah, we're not. So yeah, so that's actually, it's really difficult. And I also think it's fascinating looking at those scenes. I love that, like, looking at the structure, but then even going down deeper into the sentence structure where you're trying to get like shorter, more staccato things, right? Versus it being like, oh, I'm going to describe like the room. Like, this isn't the time to describe the room. You've already done that. Like, this is boom, 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 right? And
Yeah.
so, how are you like balancing all of those beats in that like super fast like
Oh,
moment?
that's a good question. So I think, yeah, you just have to have like adequate setup, essentially. So for example, if you have an action scene about to kick off, let's say you have two FBI agents raiding a warehouse or something like that, right? And so you want to have them, like, slowly enter the warehouse, and that gives them a chance to observe things and kind of like provide the layout, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Jonathan Mayberry writes really great action scenes, and in some of his like Joe Ledger books, for example, they'll have like recon, or they'll have like infrared and drones and
Oh
things like
yeah,
that,
yeah.
like kind of scoping out the layout of the place beforehand, so that like once they actually enter and the action begins, like everything is, where everything is, essentially. Because I think the worst thing an action scene can be is boring, but the second worst is
Yeah.
confusing,
Yes.
right? It's like you have to
Yes.
have the blocking really down. Um, and so they can be very difficult to write. And to your point too, like you're about doing short staccato sentences. I think that's really important. And I think it's important to kind of vary.
Mm-hmm.
If you're thinking about like your prose as like a roller coaster, and I believe I read this in the Horror Writers Association put out a book about writing with a number of essays. I can't remember which person, which essayist in the book had this point, but it's like an action scene is kind of like a roller coaster where you have moments where you're like, going up, 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 up.
Uh-huh.
And from a prose perspective, that's a lot of, you can have long run on
That's
sentences going up,
building.
up, 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 up,
Yeah.
and then boom. And then the short staccato is the down and more up,
Yeah, yeah.
so just kind of like wind up and wind down.
Yeah, no, I think that is amazing. And kind of like what you were saying also triggered to me. You just said like around blocking. So you're an actor and a filmmaker,
Yes.
right? So that's a little bit of a different experience coming in from a writer perspective, like a novel writing perspective. Because like, I mean, I typically don't think about things like blocking, but now you're just like, I was like, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. Like, you got to have it like kind of choreographed. So, what has your experience been as an actor and filmmaker, and how it influences your writing?
Oh, I love that question. So I actually never intended to really get into film. For the most part, I was getting my MFA at UCR Palm Desert in 2018 through 2020, and I went there to study prose. But with the program, you have to pick a cross, it's called, every quarter, which is essentially kind of like a minor that you can switch around. And so I decided to try screenwriting, and I was like, this is really fun. I loved it because it was an interesting way to look at stories, and switching from prose to screenwriting back and forth, it's just a different, like, kind of a different part of your brain, right? And
Hmm.
I actually found it really refreshing to get away from writing prose, think about story in a different way, and then go back to prose.
Yeah.
It was super fun. And so for me, I think my prose got way more visual after I started doing screenwriting, because I had to like really think about how to convey things through visual language, um,
Hmm.
versus just telling. And so, and I think I'm not really a show don't tell person per se in fiction, because
Yeah.
I think there's plenty of things that we want to tell, you know,
Yes. Hmm.
but, so I started thinking about, like, when I really had to visualize a scene and think about like things in terms of action, it really, brought that back into my prose. So I could go, instead of just saying, yeah, he felt this way, he felt that way, I find a different way to convey emotion, to convey information, things like that.
Yeah, that's really amazing. I mean, we had Brian McCauley was on here a couple of weeks ago as well, and he also screenwriting. And I just find that so fascinating because I wonder if it is a good experiment for people who maybe are kind of stuck in the like, I don't know what happens next, to get down to that level of the screenwriting level where you're literally like, it's not about the space. It's not about like the interiority and things. Like you have to be able to do that in a different way,
Yeah.
and versus like you're sitting in a character's head, which is like, one of the bigger differences between the visual medium and reading.
Yes.
And so I just like, I don't know where I was going with this, but I think that that's just really fascinating. It's got to be like something that's easier, not easier, because I don't think any of this is easy, but like something that helps to kind of distill down to like the actual story versus everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Oh, is my connection still okay? There, you just broke up a bit.
Yeah. No, your connection's totally fine. Also, this will it's mine. The way that this Riverside works, it records on your local computer and in the cloud. So at the end, I'll have everything all together and be totally fine. Won't even be able to tell.
Okay, cool. I just got the end part of that. The beginning part was all robot voice, but it sounds like everything's all good. So.
Everything's fine. Yeah, don't worry. The system will fix everything.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, so what I was saying was around distilling down with screenwriting into like what the actual story, cause and effect is versus like thinking of the bigger picture, right?
Yes.
So maybe for a newer writer, like playing with that idea may not be a bad idea to kind of figure out how are you, before you think about the prose, before you think about like how are you going to describe this, and all of those things.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Absolutely. And also just to tie it back to our previous conversation, the format in screenwriting is a type of constraint, right? And so when you learn to work within that constraint, it can really, again, make you more creative, because you don't, like you said earlier, you don't have that easy way to convey interiority. Unless you're doing a voiceover, which is often cheesy, unless Morgan Freeman is delivering it. So,
which he should always deliver. It should always be Morgan Freeman.
Yes, exactly. So that's certainly like one aspect of it. And then, just to think even a different kind of writing that is somewhat similar, but I think probably an order of magnitude harder, comic book writing. So I've done some comics as well. And so comic book writing is essentially like screenwriting with much higher degree of difficulty, because in screenwriting, I can say something like, Sabrina walked into her apartment and she put a bunch of oranges in the blender and made herself a glass of orange juice and then took a drink, right? And that can all be one sentence even. Whereas if I'm trying to convey that in a comic book, right, all those have to be, every individual action essentially has to be one frame, right? So, I can say, because everything's static, it's not, the motion is conveyed through the art, but it's like, I can, so I have to write scene, shot one basically is, you opening the door to your apartment, or something like that, right? And shot two is walking across, we see, walking across your living room to the kitchen. Shot three is perhaps dumping 3 oranges into a blender. Shot 4 is pressing the button on the blender. Shot 5 is a close up on the blender swirling around. Exactly. But it's all like, it's like, what can you convey in a single image versus what can you convey in a scene?
That is interesting, because what we're trying to do really is we're writing images, right? Like that we're creating images that are in people's brain. That's so fascinating.
Yeah. And so, like I said, I think when you switch between these different kinds of writing, it can really help with all of them, frankly.
Yeah.
You just think about things in just way, way differently.
Yeah. No, I've never thought about comics that way, but like, you're right. It's really trying to get down to each component. And then you're like, what am I really trying to convey in each of these things? Like, why is this an important thing to convey?
Yeah.
That's really fascinating. I feel like I'm going to like go off on a like tangent about this now.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, to your point too about like, what do I want to convey and like wasted space and stuff. It's like one of those things where in comic books, the artist has to take the time to draw everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so you don't want them to draw stuff that is
It's
pointless
not
and doesn't
important.
matter. Right. Because it takes a lot of time to draw a comic book.
Yeah.
And this is, I was on another podcast recently where we were talking about this, but that same idea of constraints used to be there in filmmaking.
Yeah.
So, for example, when I watch trashy films from the 80s and 90s, it's way different than watching trashy films on that came out in 2025 because of film versus digital.
Yeah.
So it's the similar principle to the comic book where, when you were making a B movie in the past, even though it was a crappy movie, everything still had to matter to some degree because film cost money and you didn't
Right.
want to
Yeah.
shoot things that didn't matter to the film necessarily. Right. Because you're
Yeah.
just burning money at that point. And, you don't want to tell your comic book artist to draw stuff that doesn't matter because that wastes their time. And now, a lot of time when I watch trashy movies, there's these interminable scenes of people like, I saw one that was like, these two people were in a bar and like, it's like, would you like a drink? Yes, I would like a drink. Okay. What kind of drink would you like? I would like wine. Well, what kind of wine would
That
you
wasn't
like?
made.
We
That
have
wasn't
red.
made.
Yeah.
You're lying. That wasn't made.
No, I swear to God. No, I watched that. Yeah, no, I swear. Yeah, I mean, this was a B movie people made probably on their cell
Yeah.
phones.
Right.
But it's streaming. It was streaming on Amazon, so they.
Good for them. Good for
Yeah,
them.
but it's like I see a lot of stuff like that in modern B movies, where because
Yeah.
there's no constraint with digital, like if you're there's if you're shooting on your phone or whatever or any other digital medium, like it doesn't cost. You don't have to pay per foot of film. Right.
Yeah.
And so because of that lack of constraint, people will shoot things that kind of don't matter.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Wow. Now I'm definitely going down a rabbit hole with this. I can feel it already.
Yeah.
Like I just want to Google and like look up stuff. Okay. Anyway, so going into the next section, we have questions that I like to ask all of my guests. It's really just to show we're asking the same question for everybody to see how it appears differently for each of our like writers, because writing is so subjective. So there's no right or wrong answer for this. First question is, what is on your desk?
Okay. So right now, I'm not actually at my desk. I'm in a telephone booth at work because I'm in the office today. Let's see. What is on my desk at home? I have 2 monitors, keyboard, mouse, a Ninja Turtles mouse pad, and then right now I have a box of stickers that I need to put away. And I think that's about, and probably an empty can of sparkling water or two because I always forget to take those downstairs with me.
So it sounds like your desk is like fairly clean though, so that's good.
It goes back and forth. I actually just cleaned it up the other day. So
you're like feeling really good about it right
yeah,
now.
exactly.
What ritual, if any, do you have before or after you write?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I try to write almost every day. And so the ritual kind of depends. Like I tend to write in the evenings if that's ritualish enough. I like to have some sort of beverage with me when I'm writing. Because I write every day. It's usually usually just a glass of water. But when I get my marathon writing sessions done on the weekends, it's definitely with a beer in hand.
Yeah.
And loosening up a little bit with alcohol and sitting there writing is how I like to party personally.
Dude, it's the best. Like when it just takes away the editing, like
Yeah.
or the like, oh, that's so stupid. You're just like, oh,
I'm like, yeah,
whatever.
this is fucking stupid and I love it.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I can be delusional as much as I want right now with this alcohol in my in my body.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd say that's probably about it. And then, I'll certainly celebrate if I finish something. Like Thomas Ligotti, one of my favorite horror writers, goes on a victory walk, he calls it, after finishing something.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And so it depends on the length. If I finish a novel, obviously I'm going to go out, and have a
Yeah, you're not going to go just on a walk.
I'm not going on just a walk. I'm going to get
deserves
the town
a little
red.
bit more.
Yep, exactly. And so often though, like if I have something really good happen, I will celebrate by writing more.
Nice.
Because I'm a sicko like that. What can I say?
I like love it.
Yeah.
What is the most bullshit piece of advice you've ever heard?
Ooh boy, it's really, there's so much crap out there. You know, I would say that, you know, honestly, when people say don't use, okay, you know what, adverbs. When people say don't use adverbs, I think that's
Hmm.
really dumb. They're a type of word. Like, why
Hmm.
avoid entire, now don't overuse adverbs. I get that, right? Because it's often a crutch for something else, right? You're not
Hmm.
really, you know, you're not conveying emotion in an interesting way because you're relying on the adverb to do it for you.
Yeah.
Right. And I think most of the time, what adverbs do, you can do with tone and stuff like that, but like, don't use them at all. I mean, that's like saying, like, you know, don't use salt when you're cooking. Like, you know,
Like, why would you not
you know,
do
why
that?
would you not? Why, you know, just you know, if you oversalt a dish, it tastes like crap for
Hmm.
sure. And if you overuse adverbs, your prose is like ridiculous, and people will make fun of you. But you know, it doesn't mean you can't use them at all.
Yeah. Okay. What is the best piece of advice you've heard?
The best piece of advice I've heard really is Stephen Graham Jones told me once, like, all the writers that are successful are just the ones who didn't quit.
Yep. I've heard that before too, and it's like I think I have it on written on my wall over here of like all my like inspirational quotes because yeah, it's just it's persistence,
It's
right?
100. Yep, exactly. Like, everybody who's successful, then in the kind of the other like add on to that I'll have is like, you can never see how hard someone else has worked, you know. So like, you never see the work they put into, and so if you start judging other people's success or calling someone else an overnight success or whatever like that, like, you really haven't seen what they've done. They might
Yeah.
have done less than you, they might have done 10 times more than you just can't know that. So don't
Yeah.
compare yourself to other people in that way.
I totally agree with that. As a horror writer, what is the darkest idea you've had that has scared you about yourself?
Ooh, okay. So I read a story about this once. So it's I forget what it's called in French, but it's called "The Call of the Void" in English.
Okay.
And so it is the sensation that, like, you know, if you're standing on like a balcony, like 10 feet up, for example, if you get a random intrusive thought that's like, I could just jump right now, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like,
Yeah.
not that you want to, but you
Yeah, but it's
realize
just
how
the
easy
intrusive
it
thought
would
that's
be.
yeah.
Yeah, how possible it is, how easy. So that's what scares me, for sure. So, yep, Call of the Void, terrifying.
Nice. Okay, okay. What part of the writing process is your favorite?
I mean, I actually weirdly like it all. Like, I do, I think I have a special enjoyment for editing because I get to go back and revisit things and like make them better.
Yeah.
But I'd say, I mean, overall, just the literally just sitting there writing new words is probably the best.
Yeah. What is the worst part of the process or your least favorite part?
Marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
it's not even part of the actual writing. It's the
Yeah.
other crap you have to do if you want anyone to read your book.
Yeah, and specifically social media. I mean, I love doing podcasts. I love having conversations like this, but like, I get a lot of anxiety around social media.
Yeah.
Not because of like the content that other people are posting necessarily, but just going like, oh shit, I need to come up with something to post on Instagram so that the algorithm doesn't forget about me. And then I'm like, you know, I spend a lot of brain power figuring out stuff to post. And then if I post something and it doesn't do well, I start beating myself up and thinking that I'm terrible at this. Why am I so stupid? I suck, etc. So I hate what social media does to me there. I wish I could get someone to do it for me.
You can also you can hire people.
Yeah,
Side note. I would recommend it. But yeah,
I
no,
may at
I
some point.
agree. Like it's such a pain and like having to put your energy into it. And especially if you're getting into publishing, like they say you don't need to have a platform, but come on, like they want to see something. So like you got to do something.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
my agent told me basically in no uncertain terms years ago that like you have to build a platform. So yeah,
yeah.
that really helps.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then what is your old school favorite mystery thriller horror?
Ooh, old school mystery thriller horror type stuff. So, I actually read a lot of crime growing up.
Hmm.
That was really my genre for a while, and I still love it. But like, you know, like Dashiell Hammett and stuff like that, for sure is always fun to revisit. And then I read a lot of like Florida-based crime and mystery
Oh,
when I was
really? Oh,
growing
that's
up.
interesting.
So Tim Dorsey's Serge Storms books were like so much fun. Just it was just like kind of like Dexter, but funnier.
Okay.
Basically. So those were always a really good time.
Nice. I will have to check those out because I haven't heard of either one of those. But that's one of the reasons I like to talk about like old school favorite mystery and thriller, because books are evergreen, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes the technology or whatever is out of date or some of the social things, but like there's so much that's still there. These are like valuable things that people are leaving behind. Like, I don't know. I just have a whole
Oh
thing
yeah.
where I just love old school books. I think that they're like, I love new books, but the old stuff is like, that's, I don't know. There's just something to be said there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one other I'll say is Ghost Story by Peter Straub, which I read last year for the first time.
Okay.
And that was really just awesome. So
Nice. Nice. Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard of any of those, and now I'm going to look them up, which is the whole point of
sweet.
this. All right, Brian. Well, thank you so much for being with me today. Where can people find you?
So if you go to my website, brianasmanbooks.com, you can find out more about my books, sign up for my mailing list, and there is also a button at the top that says book tour, and that's a breakdown of all my upcoming events in October and November. I'm doing a bunch of appearances with Philip Fracassi, so if you're a fan of his, come out and see us, and a number of other writers as well.
That's
And then on
fantastic.
social media, I'm at the Brian Asman everywhere.
And he doesn't want to respond to you.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
I'm
no,
joking. I'm
I'll
joking.
respond to you. Just try not to make like honestly, you can be mean to me. I don't give a shit about that, but don't make obvious jokes. Like that's the
Don't
thing that
just
drives
don't be
me.
lazy about it.
Yeah, don't be lazy about your jokes. There's so many people. Like I've realized that's the thing that depresses me the most about social media is the number of people who think they're funny but are not funny. Like even
It's
a
a
little
lot.
bit. Like, and it's just so painful
It's just
sometimes.
like cringe and like,
So cringy. So please don't
no.
be like you can be a dick to me all you want. Don't be cringy.
I feel like I want to find like the cringiest stuff to post to you now. Like
Oh
that's
my god, yeah.
it's like a challenge. You can find me on Instagram as well. I don't post weird shit, I guess. Maybe I do. I don't know. You can find me at Sabrina Thatcher Author. And if you want more information about my book coaching services, you can visit crimeandquill.com. Until next time, friends, stay sharp and write twisted. Bye.